Smith & Wesson Model 915, let's check it out. Smith & Wesson introduced the Model 5906 in 1989 and produced it until 1999. This really changed the face of Smith & Wesson's semi-automatics because it was widely adopted by law enforcement. While it was a little bit heavier than the Beretta 92 or the SIG P226, which those were the big three, it was thinner and it seemed to fit into your hand a little better into holsters. But again, it was heavy. So in 1992, Smith & Wesson introduced their Value Series, and this is the Model 915. It's a third generation, which typically are designated by 4 numbers. But with the 915, it stands for 9mm, 15 rounds. But it was only produced for 2 years, but it was very popular with law enforcement, mainly because of the weight. And then came the 1994 assault weapons ban. And so the 915 was actually changed to the 910 for 9mm 10 rounds, which pretty much was the same firearm, but there were even more features that were cut for the 910. So we're going to take a good look at the 915. There's a lot of police trade-ins coming in right now. I picked this up from Aim Surplus, and it's a great time to pick up really a piece of history and a great quality shooter. Smith & Wesson Model 915. This is the third generation Smith & Wesson, which typically they named them with 4 numbers. The second generation was named with 3 numbers. But this is kind of a special deal with the 915 and the 910. Now these were produced for only 2 years, from 1992 to 1994. And then the assault weapons ban happened, and then they introduced the 910, which was a 9mm 10 rounds. But they did cut some corners, plastic sights, they had a plastic guide rod. There were a few things that just brought the price down, and again, it only had a 10-round magazine. But the 915 was accepted widely by law enforcement and because of the price, and this really gave Smith & Wesson the entry into the law enforcement market for semi-automatics. They dominated the market with their revolvers, their double single-action revolvers. Colt was pretty popular early on, but Smith & Wesson pretty much had the market. So a lot of people trusted the Smith & Wesson name, and that's one of the reasons why they went with Smith & Wesson. Now before we get started, let's go ahead and make sure the gun's unloaded. So we're going to drop our magazine. It is a 15-round magazine, and the chamber is empty. Now first thing you'll notice is that we have a magazine disconnect. The hammer's in the rear position. It will not move forward until we insert the magazine, and then we can bring the hammer down. One of the things about these type Smith & Wessons is they had a decocker safety. Some guns have just a decocker, and it'll pop back up to where you can fire it. With the decocker safety, so let's say we put a round in the chamber, the hammer's in the rear position. So we're going to drop our decocker, and now it's on safe. Trigger will not work. You have to remember to bring that safety back. The Beretta 92s or the M9s were also like that. And so this actually was changed toward the later Gen 3 models, but for most of the Gen 3s you have that decocker safety. Now this was kind of a matte finish over a carbon steel slide. The Model 5906 and 5903 were stainless steel. Now this is an all steel pistol, and we're going to be bringing out a couple of different guns. They've all been safety checked. But these are actually the same pistols with just a steel frame, alloy frame, all the internals, the design of these two pistols is pretty much the same. But this really was a 5903, which was the stainless steel with the aluminum alloy frame. This is just a carbon steel with an aluminum alloy frame. Now, you will notice that it does have a decocker safety that's ambidextrous, and that was a definite big difference. Here, we just have it for the one side. And that was just to cut down on cost. Also the sights, and you can see the Novak style sights here with a front sight that's dovetailed in, and it makes a 3-dot sight. With the 915, it's a blacked out rear sight with just a white dot at the front, and that just saved some cost. Serrations are pretty much the same. I would say that possibly all the parts are interchangeable between these. Magazines are interchangeable. In fact, the Model 59, which was the Gen 1, all the way up used the same magazines. Now, one thing about the Smith & Wesson magazines is they are stainless, they're nice, and these can be fairly expensive. But Metgar makes magazines currently for the 59 series. And so this is actually a Metgar magazine, and it came with the pistol. But it functions well, and I tried other mags, and of course they worked. But another little subtle difference, if you look at the front of the frame here, you'll see that it actually has a groove. And all this material was shaved off with the 5903 and the 5906. So this area right here just thinned this down. Here on the Model 915, it's actually the same dimension all the way out, or the same thickness. So it just gives it a little bit of a cut here, but otherwise this was not removed, and again, that was just one of the weight savings. As far as shooting these guns, they are identical. Now this one has a hoe grip. This is an aftermarket grip. When I bought this, it had it on there. But this has the more thin, standard Smith & Wesson grip. And it actually feels pretty good in your hand. It's not highly textured. It does have some checkering here, but this is a little bit worn from a new version. But it is a one-piece grip that just covers the entire rear of the lower receiver, or the frame. We do have a beaver tail, which allows you to just get a really good ride up on the pistol. No problem with hammer bite or slide bite. It is a fairly high bore axis, but yet it just shoots really well. Now, I've started kind of picking up some of these old Smiths, which I've had a few in the past, and I've done reviews on them. And they're very popular because people really love the Gen 3 Smith & Wessons. It's really funny. Whenever I do a Smith & Wesson review on one of the M&Ps, there's always people in the comments saying they wish Smith & Wesson would bring back the Gen 3. Now, the Gen 3 has its deficiencies. And one of those, as far as with an M&P, is it doesn't have an accessory rail. You're not getting an optics ready version. There's no front cocking serrations on the slide. And it's polymer. And in its state of the art, that's what people are wanting. Polymer frame pistols are dominating the market. But we do see a number of different handguns that are being produced with aluminum alloy frames, even with all steel frames. And even Smith & Wesson has come out with their M&P 2.0 metal. So we're going to get into some of the details, but one of the things I really want to talk about is this a viable self-defense option? Yes, it's an older gun. Actually, 30 years old. But does this still have all the attributes of a good self-defense firearm? And I would say it definitely does. A lot of people will inherit these. They'll find one at a gun shop. They'll pick it up, a used one. This one, again, was bought from AIM Surplus, and they just happened to have some police trade-ins that popped up. I bought one, paid $425 for this handgun. Again, this is more of the economy line, but to be honest with you, except for the decocker, this shoots exactly like your Model 5903, or for that matter, the 5906, just a little heavier. But for a carry gun, lightweight, it is a little bit larger. I mean, definitely, you're going to have to dress for success. But this is definitely one of those guns that is a very capable self-defense option. Now, being a double single action pistol, it just means that you load a magazine, you put your rounds into the gun, you rack the slide, enter a round into the chamber. Now your hammer is in the rear position, and you're ready to fire. But to put it on your decocker, which is also on safe, you just drop it down, and then again, you bring up your safety. And this is really the way you should carry the gun. Has a hammer block in here, so it's drop safe, and this is just a very easy way to have a long trigger pull, but to have that as a safety, just like all your revolvers. So first is you have that long trigger pull, and you'll watch the hammer, and it comes all the way back. It's heavy, but it's very smooth. Then you fire around. Subsequent shots are going to be with the hammer in the rear position. Pull the trigger, a very light, crisp trigger, and every shot after that. So that first shot is a doozy, and you need to train to get used to that. But subsequent shots are going to be a lot faster and quicker and honestly easier to get on target. Now with the safety disengaged, you can bring your thumb over and just pull the hammer back. And now you can fire each shot single action. And then subsequent shots will be single action. One of the things about a striker fire pistol is that every shot is consistent from the first to the last. With a double single action pistol, that first shot is going to be a long, heavy trigger pull. But the subsequent shots are going to be quick. And so you need to train to make sure that you don't pull that trigger on single action before you mean to. Now while the sights on the 915 are just basic, you can replace these. There's a number of companies that still make sights for not only the 915 without the Novak style, which they still make them also for the 5906, 5903. There is a difference between these sights that don't have the Novak and the ones that do. Now the barrel is stainless steel. It comes out flush pretty much to the end. We'll take a look at the barrel when we disassemble the gun. Now as far as the trigger action, we're going to look at that double action trigger pull first. So it's a long, heavy trigger pull, and it's heavy, and then it breaks right there. The break is not very crisp. Now single action is with the hammer in the rear position, and you'll notice that the trigger is brought way back toward the frame. So here we have some take up to about right here, and actually a better trigger than it is from double action when you hit that wall. Reset right there. Reset is really fast. We're going to take our Lyman trigger gauge and we're going to check double action. 9 pounds, 5.5 ounces. 9 pounds, 8.8 ounces. Actually, that's a little less than some of the other Gen 3s I've had. Single action, 5 pounds, 3.9 ounces. 5 pounds. Magazine release right here, it's a metal mag release. It has some checkering on it. It is kind of small, but you get used to getting to it, and it's pretty positive. Slide stop right here, it has serrations. One thing you don't want to do is to ride your thumb here, because after the last round it'll close the slide. So it won't hold open on the last round. But the gun itself is very well balanced, and when we took them out to the range and shot it, it was actually very enjoyable to shoot. And with 15+1, this gives you a viable self-defense option. And there's something about these older handguns, just have some soul to them. There are serrations on the front, which is typical for your 59 series, and then there are serrations here, which typically there's checkering on the 5906 and 5903. The magazine release is not swappable to the other side. Weight of the Model 915, 28.44 ounces. Now since we have the Glock out, and this is actually the Model 32, it's a 357 SIG, but it's the same size as your Glock 19. Not a lot of difference. You do see the beaver tail coming out of the Smith. Right here, the slides are really close to the same in length, but definitely the Glock is considerably thicker. And then we see the beaver tail, and that does hang off. As far as the grip, the Smith does come down just a touch. So really, to be honest, these are very similar firearms in size. And really, the grips are about the same thickness. But because the Smith & Wesson is more curved, it feels a little bit more ergonomic in your hand. Big thanks to Fiocchi for sponsoring the ammo, all made in the USA. One of the #1 suppliers of ammunition in the country. Also, we appreciate Lula Loaders for saving our thumbs. Guys, when it comes to it, the 915, while it is a more budget-friendly third-generation Smith, I mean, it was really made to be more attractive to law enforcement. It's a nice matte finish, it has a really good look to it. Removal of the ambi, right hand safety. You know, I mean, if you're left-handed, that's going to be a detriment, but otherwise, you know, it does cut some price on it. But overall, it doesn't cut out in performance, and that's probably the biggest thing. Now with any double action pistol, you drop that decocker, but sometimes, you know, they'll pop back up. These, they come down, they stay down. You got to remember to take that safety off. But otherwise, I like the way it feels. It's very balanced. It does have that metal, so it is a little bit weighty, but I think it's about 3 ounces over a polymer frame, which actually aids in recoil management. Pointability, excellent. Sights, you know, pretty rudimentary in a sense, but I'm sure those can be changed out. Overall, just a very great shooting gun, very reliable. This still is an excellent option for self-defense. And 15+1, I mean, that's a great mag capacity compared to the single stack mags that were available beforehand. So we've had a great time with this gun. I was really excited to get it out to the range, and I have not been disappointed. All right, for disassembly, drop your magazine, slide back and check the chamber, and it's empty. Now, you want to bring back your slide, and you want to line up this into this slide stop into this notch. So we're going to do it just like this. Here on the other side, we have a small button. We're going to push it through. It's just part of the slide stop. Takes just a little bit to make sure you're in the right place. There it goes. We pull that out. Now, when you release your slide, you don't want it to go all the way. Because of the decocker, this hammer is going to fall. So put in your magazine, because we have the magazine disconnect, and then we're going to drop the hammer slowly. Now remove your magazine, and then we can just pull the slide right off. So a little different, but that's because of the magazine disconnect. Here we're going to take off our recoil spring and guide rod. It is separate, it's all metal, and then we have our barrel, which definitely a little bit different than your John Browning design, linkless design, but these have been known to be very reliable, excellent guns. You can see the machining in here, and this has been worn. I mean, this was a police trade-in again, so it does have some wear to it. But overall, it's in really good shape. Here with the frame, you see the marks on the rails, but otherwise, very nicely done. One of the things about an aluminum frame you have to be careful of is because you have a steel slide working back and forth. And so it can put wear on these aluminum frames. A lot of newer designs have steel reinforcements just to keep the damage down. But these actually look pretty good as far as the markings. So just a little bit of wear, but not really any kind of damage. So now we're going to reassemble. Drop in your barrel. Recoil spring and guide rod back together. Now when reinserting your guide rod, right here you'll see this small little crescent. It's not much of a lip, but you want to take your guide rod and you want to set it right on that little tiny lip. Be careful because it can spring out. And so now we take it and put it back over our frame. But when we get to here, you've got these levers and they're spring loaded, so they're up. So you have to press one down. And then we have to leave the hammer in the down position because we're going to bring these levers down and they depress once you have the hammer in the down position. And that back one's a little bit more difficult, but once you get past it, you're done. Now you're going to bring back your slide again and you want to line up that notch. Take your slide stop. And once it snaps into place, and we're good to go. So guys, is this a viable self-defense option? Yes, it is, hands down. And honestly, I don't think there's many people that would disagree. I mean, it has the 15-round mag capacity. It's a Smith & Wesson. It's good quality. It shoots well, it's ergonomic. The M&P 2.0, this is a polymer frame striker fire pistol, black nitride slide. That striker fire trigger pull, it has the front cocking serrations, it has the accessory rail, and you can get it with the optics ready. There's definitely some advantages to this handgun, but is it more effective? Not really. It's just a great older firearm. It's from yesteryear, but still a great option for self-defense. And if you want more of a comparison between the M&P 2.0, we did one with the 5903, which is pretty much the exact same gun as the 915. It just has a couple of different differences. Now, one thing about the third generation Smith & Wessons is that a lot of people still enjoy them. They still love the way they shoot. There is a collector's market around it. Because it's a used gun, prices are going to be all over the place, honestly. This was a police trade-in from Aim Surplus. I did pay $4.25 for it. If you go to Gun Broker or you find it in your local gun shop, you could pay more. It may not be a police trade-in. It may just be one that's in better shape. The Model 5906 brings typically a good premium, even the 5903. But it was more of an upgraded version. But even this model, this is an excellent handgun. And to be honest, they don't shoot any different. Sights are replaceable. They're still making sights for them. And the grips, you can even get wood grips. You can get hoe grips. I love the way it shoots. It's just a great gun. We didn't have any malfunctions. These will interchange with any of your 59 Gen 3 series pistols. It's light, and honestly, you could carry this for a concealed carry, make also a great bedside gun, or just taking it out to the range and enjoying some firearms that, to me, again, have a little bit of extra soul to them. So the Smith & Wesson Model 915, yeah, it's about 30 years old, but it's still a viable self-defense option. And with all the police trade-ins coming in, this is a great gun to pick up, typically for a reasonable price. And you really get all the features you do of a modern firearm. And honestly, these things shoot incredibly well. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. But it was thinner than the 92. But it was thinner than the thin grip makes it really easy. The thin grip, great to put your hand. Small little notch right there. Wow, there it goes. And looking for a good, capable airplane going over, making too much freaking noise.